Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. It's not an unhealthy obsession if you put it in a podcast online.
That's right.
Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. My name is Jake. I'm a former evangelical turned queer sex therapist. And today, I am once again honored to be joined by the lavish, likable, learned, luminous, legendary leading lady, Brooke.
Leading lady was a good one.
Hey, Brooke.
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Good.
We were just talking right before we were recording. We haven't recorded in a second.
It's been a while.
And this is the main way that we do friendship. And so I feel like I haven't spoken to you in a long time.
Oh, hi.
Hi. How's life? Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no more paper straws because they explode.
Sure.
Yeah. Trump signed that executive order right away.
Oh, God. I feel like talking about executive orders, even though this is coming out in like 3 days, is just going to date this podcast so quickly. It's like,
absolutely.
Oh my God, do you remember a year ago, last week, when he signed this one?
It feels like it has already been 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the truth is that we still have 4 years to go.
Man, working with trans teens right now is a
Oof.
difficult time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why I brought this up. The last thing I ever want to talk about after work is Trump or politics.
Sure.
Let's talk about religious trauma.
Yeah, much lighter, much easier. Brooke, happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day.
Do you believe in love? And do you believe in life after love?
I believe in a thing called love.
Just listen to the rhythm of my heart.
Yeah, that's right. And I believe in life after love. I certainly hope so.
Sure.
And I'm going to say something controversial. I believe in Valentine's Day.
Ooh.
What's wrong with it? You love someone and you buy them a candy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you basically do that for me every time we record.
Yes. Boyfriend and I have a Valentine's Day tradition of getting Taco Bell.
Cute.
Nothing there is heart-shaped.
They should make a heart-shaped taco.
Oh my God, they should. That'd be really cute. I guess
Yeah.
2 tacos, like, on top of each other could make a heart.
We'll talk more about that later. Are you an anti-Valentiner?
I'm deeply apathetic. It's not, like, my favorite holiday by any means, but, like, my dad is hardcore anti-Valentine's Day. It's a Hallmark holiday made up by big corporations to sell
I mean,
cards.
yes.
Sure.
It is. But who cares?
Got some news about Christmas, though.
For real. I mean, it is, but it's also like, here's a holiday about telling people you love them.
Yeah.
That doesn't really hurt anybody.
My hypothesis is that we have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or winter holidays kind of right in a row because it's getting dark, and that's how it's like motivation for people not to kill themselves.
Right.
And then they're like, fuck, President's Day? Valentine's Day. We all look forward to that, huh?
Yeah.
It's almost spring. Don't worry about it.
I know that people don't like it because they're single and it feels like getting love rubbed in their face, but like, call that a Tuesday. Like,
That's true.
that's just every day.
Also, we're recording on Thursday the 13th. I believe it's Galentine's Day.
Oh, yeah. But not for us old ladies. We are celebrating Valentine's Day on Saturday.
Ooh, that sounds like much more the move.
The theme this year is weenies and martinis.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. It'll be great. Happy Galentine's Day.
Happy Galentine's Day. Also, a little behind the scenes for you readers. We just both worked full days, and we are in the office. I've been here since about 10:30 a.m. It's about 8 right now. We'll probably leave around 1 a.m.
Yep.
So the whiskey and snacks are necessary.
Yeah.
Brooke, what is on the menu today?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Sprite for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to be like, no whiskey. But then Jake poured themselves some whiskey. And I was like, yes, please. I'll have some. So expect a real lively second podcast recording. I already ate all my Twix. And Jake always brings Pringles, sour cream and onion, which are so good. Well, one thing you don't know is that I have oatmeal cream pies stowed away.
Incredible.
Which we could have. And disgusting granola bars that taste like horses.
Mm.
We won't get into that.
We're gonna leave that one alone. We have Jim Beam honey whiskey.
Oh, yeah.
It's
really
a
good.
personal favorite of mine. And I also have water because I'm a hydrated bitch.
Oh, good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got a big Stanley Cup for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like it?
I like yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say what you like about it right now. Look at it.
I don't see it right
Exactly.
now. Okay.
I thought it would help me bring water to work and drink it, but it's mostly decorative.
Your cat also has a Stanley Cup.
My cat has a Stanley Cup that I gave her for Christmas, knowing I was going to get a Stanley Cup.
Does she use it?
Yeah, she likes it.
Cute.
It's not a real one. It's a cat toy.
Sure.
And everyone's going to be like, you spent that much money on a cat toy. And then my Stanley Cup has a tiny Stanley Cup as the cover. I've said Stanley Cup a lot of times now.
Sponsor us.
Sponsor us. Stanley Cup hates Dobson too. Everyone's going to be like, she's more basic than we thought. Oh my God.
And we love you for it.
We sure do.
So, Brooke, today we're back with another book written by the Big D himself.
Oh.
This is an updated version of Dobson's second ever book. The first, obviously, being Dare to Discipline.
Ka-chow.
Dare to Discipline, ka-chow, was written when Dobson was only a psychologist. He didn't have the audience he would later cultivate. He wasn't a bastion of all things evangelical and pro-child abuse. Dare to Discipline
Ka-chow.
came out in 1970. Our book today was originally written in 1974.
Okay.
This book is the most in his lane Dobson is, at least of the shit that I've read, which isn't to say that it's good by any means. I feel like I can see Dobson the clinician in this book.
Okay.
He speaks, I think, the most to actual therapy stuff, even if he fucks it up and does it in a bad way. Get ready for a book that is only partly pro-child abuse.
Oh.
Our book today is Building Confidence in Your Child.
Okay. Those don't look like 70s kids.
They do not. Well, this version came out in 2015. The original book was called Hide and Seek, which is about attachment styles. You either hide or pursue.
Oh, very clever, Dobby.
Yeah, I think that's a much better title. This is super generic.
I would like to dare to say, but I'm going to take it back. I was about to say that you have less tabs in this book, but I think actually you have more tabs in this book.
I don't know. Honestly, it feels about the same.
Okay.
I have a lot more citations to follow up on, which we're going to talk about. But
great. Wait, you put it down and I instantly forgot the title. What's
it's
it
not a catchy title. Building Confidence in Your Child.
Oh yeah, that's boring.
It's boring.
I'm surprised. Why'd they change it?
I don't know. It also it's not memorable. Bringing up boys, bringing up girls. This also I don't think it's technically grammatically incorrect, but it feels incorrect. Building confidence. I always want to be building self-esteem. I don't know. Anyway, stupid book. We're gonna get into it. But I need to read the start of this book to you.
Great.
Quote, he began his life with all the classic handicaps and disadvantages. His mother was a powerfully built, dominating woman who found it difficult to love anyone. She'd been married 3 times, and her second husband divorced her because she beat him up regularly. The father of the child I'm describing was the third husband. He died of a heart attack a few months before the child's birth. As a consequence, the mother had to work long hours from his earliest childhood. She gave him no affection, no love, no discipline, no training during those early years. Despite a high IQ, he failed academically and finally dropped out during his 3rd year of high school. He thought he might find acceptance in the Marine Corps. They reportedly built men, and he wanted to become one. But his problems came with him. Once again, he thought he could run from his problems, so he went to live in a foreign country. But he was rejected there too. Nothing had changed. While there, he married a girl who herself had been an illegitimate child and brought her back to America with him. Soon, she began to develop the same contempt for him that everyone else displayed. Finally, in silence, he pleaded no more. No one wanted him. No one had ever wanted him. He was a most rejected man. His ego lay shattered in dust. The next day he arose a strangely different man. He arose, went to the garage, took down a rifle he had hidden there.
Oh my God.
He took it with him to his newly acquired job at a book storage building. And from a window on the 6th floor of that building, shortly after noon, November 22nd, 1963, he sent 2 shells crashing right into the head of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Oh my God.
This book opens with 3 fucking pages about Lee Harvey Oswald. These are selected quotes. I cut out a bunch of shit.
Is the assertion that Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy because he had a mean mommy?
Yes.
Great.
And his wife was mean to him.
Oh,
There's a lot of women blaming in this.
Wait.
Also, a follow-up quote shortly after. Not everyone who suffers through a bad childhood becomes an assassin, although it is sobering to consider the published cases of Gary Gilmore, David Berkowitz, and Ted Bundy.
You have got to be kidding me. First of all, Ted Bundy wasn't really an assassin. Second of all, is he in love with Ted Bundy?
Yes.
What is this? Obsession.
I
Dobson is such a true crime girly.
Oh my god, he would have loved My Favorite Murder. My note here is do a shot for Ted Bundy reference.
Oh my god.
So
unhinged.
That's not really related to this book at all.
No,
it's just a non sequitur, but it's a non sequitur from Dobson, so I had to include it as well.
Yes.
I want to start actually this episode by looking at the arguments and underpinnings of this book. Like I said, it's the most in his lane book I've read of Dobson, so I want to start by looking at this piece of shit from a professional lens. This book isn't about building confidence. It's actually about inferiority. Mm-hmm. Overcoming inferiority is, to Dobson, the main motivator in human behavior. A couple quotes. In short, a sizable portion of all humanity is devoted to the task of shielding us from the inner pain of low self-esteem. I believe this to be one of the most dominant forces in life, even exceeding the power of sex in its influence. Not only do lay people fail to understand each other, it has discouraged me to see how often my professional colleagues, psychiatrists, psychologists, and counselors, have often overlooked inferiority as a most obvious route for emotional distress. Lack of self-esteem produces more symptoms of psychiatric disorders than any other factor yet identified. That last part feels important. Produces more symptoms of psychiatric disorders than any other factor identified.
Yeah.
What pushes a distance runner to plod along for 10 miles in the lonely sand before the sun rises each morning? What inner need propels a student into all the rigors of medical school, pushing the limits of endurance through years of mental discipline? The power behind these and other kinds of success almost invariably springs from the need for self-worth, the need to prove something about one's adequacy, the need to compensate. This, at least broadly, is a legitimate foundation for a therapeutic practice. A moment to talk about psychology and the practice of therapy, readers, if you will indulge me. This is also part of my job, is teaching therapy to therapists, to new therapists, so different educator cap going on. There's like 1,000 different models of therapy, right? Reader, you might be familiar with some, like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, emotion-focused therapy, EFT, like the government, therapists love acronyms. Mm-hmm. Each model of therapy has some philosophical underpinnings. They all have some narrative of why people experience distress and how to help them. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is about changing your thoughts, your cognitions, and acting differently, your behaviors. It's like assuming everyone hates you, right? That is a maladaptive thought that changes how you interact with the world. It's about doing things better, not necessarily healing inner wounds. Mm-hmm. Something like internal family systems, IFS, is a lot about insights. It looks at different parts of yourself, your inner child, the part of you that wants to cuss a bitch out, the part of you who wants everyone to get along, and tries to provide greater insight about these parts in an effort to make them all get along better and help you feel a greater sense of agency over them. It's very insight heavy, and while there may be actionable things to do, it's not so much behavioral, right? You kind of get the gamut of these things. Most therapists don't ascribe to just one model of therapy. Most therapists say they're eclectic, which is a personal gripe of mine that doesn't describe anything. What are you drawing from? Sure, drawing from everything. What are you drawing from? So, Brooke.
Yes.
What models of therapy do you utilize?
I'm eclectic.
I'm leaving this podcast.
No, I think people come to therapy because they either want to change their behaviors or their thoughts or their feelings, mm-hmm. or deepen their understanding of themselves. And so you have to sort of assess the reason why the person is there, mm-hmm. before you can really figure out what to do. Because I always joke about, I notoriously hate CBT, but it is obviously totally effective and a good model of therapy for people who are there to sort of change their behaviors or their responses to their feelings. Mm-hmm. It's not like a great model of therapy for people who want to like explore their childhoods. Yeah. Right. So you find out kind of what the need is and then you do it. But I pull from client-centered Rogerian therapy, which is like the client leads the session, which not everyone likes, but some people love. Mm-hmm. Grief therapy practices, feminist theory, basically all the humanistic theories. Yeah. I'm not a behavioral therapist. That basically sums me up.
Absolutely. We share a lot of values and philosophies, and so we have similar therapeutic styles. I am fundamentally a humanistic therapist. I believe that a lot of dysfunction is caused by and also causes dysfunction in our relationships with others. I believe therapy is about having vulnerable and corrective emotional experiences to help people show up more fully as themselves. I draw from you have these consistent negative thoughts that all fall into this one pattern. We can use some CBT to help like dislodge these thoughts. Or, you just went through a really traumatic experience. Let's use some narrative therapy to help make sense of this, right? I use different models of therapy. My grounding is more in that humanistic style of therapy. Inferiority, while not the focus per se, does play a role. In traditional humanistic therapy, we look for conditions of worth, messages that we receive that say you're only worthy of love, respect, success if X. So you're only a man if you aren't feminine. You're only worthy of respect if you're the top of your class, etc. That's related to inferiority.
Conditions of worth are one of the main things I talk about with clients.
Yeah. I think it's a really effective framing. Also, importantly about conditions of worth, they're inherently a lie.
Right.
The whole point of humanistic therapy is getting people to experience unconditional positive regard.
I think the idea is like, these are things that we develop as children because we have to figure out how to stay safe.
Yeah.
Right? If you are not in a secure environment, or if you are, but it, and we say like, oh, I'm safe and / loved when I ...
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we learn that. And then we apply that to everything in adulthood.
Absolutely. And importantly, no model of therapy is inherently more correct than others. Some are better for various presenting problems. You're not going to CBT your way out of schizophrenia.
Right.
But in general, most theories of therapy have similar success rates. There are common factors theories, which look at differences in outcomes across models. The most important thing in therapy isn't actually the model. It's things like goal collaboration, empathy, genuineness.
Autonomy,
yeah. There's a study from 2014, which is linked in the episode description, and it finds that treatment differences, so difference in therapy models, accounted for less than 1% of differences in patient outcomes. Things like empathy, goal collaboration mattered so much more.
One thing I remember learning in school is like the act of going to therapy is in itself therapeutic. And so, of course it matters somewhat what the therapist does and says in the sessions, but just going to therapy, especially I think couples therapy, it's really effective.
Yeah.
Making that choice you're already deep in the process.
I think just like talking about stuff, getting it out of your head and into the world is helpful in and of itself. Like I said, part of my job is training new therapists, and we talk a good deal about therapeutic orientations and models. It is important that a therapist has a structure to give to therapy, right? But the specifics of which structure you choose aren't the most important thing. So, why this tangent? Because therapeutic orientation is nuanced. Like, one is not inherently more correct than the other, and a lot of them get at similar things. In contrast, Dobson views his beliefs here as very black and white, very correct. He is the authority, this is the truth. Kind of like his interpretation of the Bible.
Right.
According to Dobson, inferiority is the driving factor of all human behavior. There's no room for learning or nuance or difference, or it's this one thing.
So does he sort of posit that we all begin with an inferiority complex? And then we have to sort of like build our way out of it?
Yes, mostly. It's Adlerian in that way.
Right.
Which we've talked about before, although Dobson, I don't think, has ever read Adler.
No.
The problem, though, with this, or taking any therapeutic model and saying this is the capital T truth, is that it's non-falsifiable. Did I make this podcast to gain a sense of importance and value in an attempt to overcome my internal sense of inferiority? I don't think so. I like to think, at least, I did it as an artistic outlet, because I felt like someone needed to yell at this prick, and because I wanted an excuse to hang out with Brooke.
Yeah.
But, like, I guess you could relate all those things back to a sense of inferiority. Freud posited that sex and violence were the keys to understanding human behavior. A different case could be made that this whole show is some psychosexual repression on my end. Again, I don't think that's true, but I can't prove it. For this and many other reasons, I am also very wary of psychologists and therapists who focus on explaining your subconscious. I think there's a lot of ways for people just project their own shit and then you take it on as truth.
Yep.
What Dobson is doing here is setting himself up as the arbiter and explainer of all human behavior. He has the secret truth unlocked. He has it figured out. And then, as we've talked before, confirmation bias. Just like, I see, found inferiority in this, found inferiority in that.
And what does that sound like? To me, it sounds like what we do when we are a cult leader. Right? It's all just repackaging therapy, but abusively. There's
a very fine line between cult leader and therapist.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
This is also a fundamentally negative view of people. In Dobson's view, we are scared and lonely, inferior creatures, desperately looking for safety and connection and warmth anywhere we can find it. My view of people, very intentionally, is a lot more neutral. I do think people are inclined towards feelings of inferiority. I also think people do things out of the goodness of their heart. People do things for beauty, for relationships, because they're horny, because they're spiteful.
Because they're curious.
Because they're curious. I think it's all a lot more complex than just, it's inferiority. But I also can't prove that. But this negative view of people and this authoritative view of human behavior fits very cleanly into the evangelical view of people. We're all made to be with God, but because of sin, we're all inherently broken, vile. You should feel inferior. I despise my own behavior, so saith the newsboys. Being motivated by a sense of inferiority makes sense here. And these two factors, the authoritativeness and the negative view of humans, is where I believe Dobson's merging of psychology and theology begins, at least intellectually. Also, as a somewhat tangent, I've described therapy before as applied philosophy, and I stand by that.
Well, it's so antithetical, at least to client-centered therapy, which is what I do, where it's truly like, I don't know you better than you know you. You come in here and you tell me what's going on with you, and then we'll work on it together, right? But I'm not here to tell you who you are.
There's a sense of humility to client-centered practice that Dobson is many things. Humble is not one.
I wonder if he would have known Carl Rogers. You can cut this part out, but I'm just curious.
Oh, I mean...
They would have been existing in the same time.
Yeah, I want to Google this now.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. He would have probably hated him.
Probably. Hey everyone, Editing Jake here. I was unable to find anything where Dobson talks about Carl Rogers or humanistic therapy, but if you know any, please send it to us at ihatejamesdobson@gmail.com. I did, however, find even more fundamentalist evangelicals critiquing Dobson by comparing him to Carl Rogers and saying that Dobson is basically just a secular humanist, which, as a secular humanist, I can assure you he is not that. I also think it's important to remember that in a lot of ways, Dobson is a moderate in evangelical spaces. God. Okay, and on that cheery note, back to the episode. He might be right in individual cases, but applying it so broadly and crudely and generally means he misses so much. Quote, women during World War II who didn't earn a regular paycheck were taught to think, I'm just a housewife. Suddenly, their sense of unworthiness initiated an emotion-charged reversal from acceptance to aggression. It is most unfortunate that wives and mothers were not given the status and respect their position deserves.
Wait. I know, I'm not going to slow us all down.
No, go for it.
Hear this in the morning. But does he think that that was like the awakening in World War II, that women were like, I want to be more than just a housewife?
Yes, Dobson thinks that feminism as a political movement happened because women were looked down upon as housewives in World War II, and then they got angry about it.
Oh my God. Okay.
So that's what I mean by he misses so much. If it's like,
Yes.
it's just because of inferiority, the roots of feminism are vast and varied and multiracial, and
Yes.
it goes past World War II, goes even past like America, right? Like,
Yeah.
another quote, both socially and individually, people respond in anger when they are put in inferior position for a prolonged time. I've mentioned the anger of the feminist movement. Various civil rights and liberation movements have been fueled by this anger, based on past perceptions of inferiority. We see it in the gay movement, Vietnam veterans groups, organizations of the disabled, and some of the reactionary paramilitary organizations.
He's saying this?
Whenever people perceive that they are treated as second-class citizens, anger is a common reaction. History is full of examples. Adolf Hitler told the defeated Nazi people that their loss of World War I was the fault of their leaders, and of course, the Jews.
You know, Adolf Hitler is second for James Dobson only to Ted Bundy.
Woof.
But I like it when Dobson, I like it when he accidentally is on our side.
Mm-hmm.
When he's like, when you make someone feel really inferior, then they have a low sense of self-worth and they get angry and then they fight to be made less inferior. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So why are you giving us all this information about how we should continue to do that?
It's also that one paragraph in isolation, other than the Nazi comparison, I don't find particularly objectionable.
Right.
But in the context of Dobson's work, it's very infantilizing. Oh, you're just doing that because you're angry, as if that anger means that your points aren't valid or real.
It's so minimizing. It's so minimizing for him to say that about, women and housewives when that is then what he goes on to, insist upon.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right.
There's a stunning lack of humility that pervades every piece of Dobson's work. He already understands the keys to human behavior, so he doesn't have to listen to you. There's nothing left for him to learn from people of other faiths, other clinicians, queer people, hell, even other types of Christians. If you look at the world through rose-colored glasses, every red flag just looks like a flag. And that's a quote from BoJack Horseman.
Oh, really? I was about to give you so much credit for that.
No, I wish. I wish I was that smart. But yeah, if you just look at the world through this one lens, you miss so much. Some really important things.
Mm-hmm.
Part 2 of this script is James Dobson hates people. He talks about people in really smug and off-putting ways. The first part of this book is ostensibly written to critique the bad values of mainstream culture, especially our emphasis on beauty and intelligence. So I think a valid, kind of awkwardly worded critique, teachers are the product of the same society that molds the values and attitudes of everyone else. They're often repelled by the physically unattractive child and drawn to the cutie.
What?
Yeah, so, we do favor conventionally attractive people for all of what that can mean. And we do subconsciously treat them better than people we perceive as unattractive. That is a bias that humans exist. Dobson's language about it feels weird. He talks a lot in this chapter about attractive children.
Yeah.
That feels bad.
Yeah.
But the critique, that is just a critique of a culture, sure.
Well, he's just saying people are biased.
Yes. Another critique, shortly after examining their baby's eyes, ears, nose, and related appendages for imperfections, most new parents begin looking for signs of a budding genius, and they often seem to find them.
Yeah, that is true.
A child's growth and development are so rapid during the first few years of life that awestruck parents watch their brilliant creation in amazement. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read that. I was like, yeah, I know parents who do that for sure.
I mean, first of all, good. They should. You
Yeah.
should think your kid is like the most amazing, special thing in the world. Second of all, true dat, Dobson, because I know a lot of people who have kids and they're like, my child's the smartest child in the entire world. Would you like to hear him recite 90 minutes of... No, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, okay, fair.
And both of those, I think, are valid critiques of culture, that we place a lot of emphasis on beauty and a specific form of intelligence, and we tie people's sense of personal worth to those things.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Sure.
This is not a critique of culture. I am sitting at this moment near the guest swimming pool of the Sheridan Hotel, Waikiki Beach, Honolulu, Hawaii, which I started reading this book right next to.
Okay, reader, I just want to say one thing. Jake is never going to stop mentioning Hawaii and their trip to Hawaii in front of me because he knows how jealous I am.
It was great. You should have been there.
Ugh.
The beautiful pool is virtually deserted, although around its borders lie several hundred narcissistic body worshippers. They are a curious lot when one stops to examine them. Each clutches a bottle of suntan lotion and rotates the flesh systematically under the burning sun, giant rotisseries baking themselves evenly on all sides. They endure this monotonous activity for hours, checking their skin regularly and comparing their skin tone to those around them. Medical science tells them this solar exposure will wrinkle them like prunes within a few years, and they will likely develop skin cancers later in life. No matter. They are in hot pursuit of instant beauty, and it is worth the cost. He's so mean to these people.
Yeah.
He's not critiquing culture, he's just making fun of them, calling them giant rotisseries. Right? That's not actually a critique of our culture. That's just you being a dick. I think it's somewhat humorous.
Sure.
But he doesn't differentiate this me critiquing culture versus this is me just being an asshole. It's all wrapped together. And that makes it hard to tell sometimes if he's being sarcastic or truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is really mean-spirited.
He feels like the kind of person who would say something really mean and then be like, it was just a joke.
Schrodinger's asshole.
What is it?
Schrodinger's asshole.
Oh, yeah.
He says something offensive and then waits to determine if it's a joke or not based on other people's reactions.
Oh, yeah. Is that what it's called?
I mean, it's an internet meme, but I think it works. This book has a lot of questions and answers scattered throughout it. Honestly, the structure is very unhinged. Sometimes you're at the end of chapters, sometimes you're at the end of sections, sometimes they're just not there at all. Drove me insane. It's really hard. I think it's actually really disorienting. Whatever. Here's a question, though, that I think is really indicative of Dobson's dislike of people. Question. My little girl is sometimes sugar sweet, and other times she is unbearably irritating. How can I get her out of a bad mood when she has not really done anything to deserve punishment? Dobson says, I would suggest you take her in your arms and talk to her in this manner. I don't know whether you've noticed it or not, but you have two personalities. A personality is a way of acting and talking and behaving. One of your personalities is sweet and loving. No one could possibly be more lovable and happy when this personality is in control. And all you have to do is press the little button, ding, to call it out. But sometimes you push another button, ding, and out comes another personality. It is cranky and noisy and silly, and wants to fight with our brother and disobey your mom. I know you can press the button for the nice personality, or you can call up the mean one. Sometimes it takes a spanking or two to make you press the right button. If you're going to keep pressing the wrong button, like you have been today, I'm going to have to make you uncomfortable. I'm tired of that cranky character, and I want to see the grinny one.
And that, readers, is how we develop conditions of worth.
Woo, woo, woo. It sure is. Almost like not really building confidence in your child with that.
The shorthand of that is, I am your adult parent, and I love you when you behave this way. Mm-hmm. And I love you less when you don't.
Also, famously, children have so much control over their emotions.
For sure. I mean, God.
They just press a button. They just choose how to feel.
A button. Severance.
Good, good. He just doesn't like people. Mm-hmm. And if you apply this disdain for others into the culture wars, you get predictable, consistent, and bad results. Here's a Q&A about kids with intellectual disabilities. Do slow learners and mentally handicapped children have the same needs for esteem that others have? Answer, sometimes I wish they didn't. During a portion of sometimes I wish they didn't have the same needs for self-esteem that other children have. During a portion of my training at, and this is the quote, Lanterman State Hospital in California, I was impressed by the vast need for love shown by some of the most retarded patients.
Okay. I find this to be one of the more infuriating ones that we've got.
Yes. This made me very upset. He talks about disabled people in such this, like, objectifying and, like, infantilizing way. There's a story later that I cut from this where he, like, a kid wants a trombone in this hospital because he likes playing the trombone, and he's like, as I rolled away, he asked me for a trombone one last time, and I hope somebody gave it to him. Oh, his self-worth depended on it. It's like, bro.
I mean, I know it's the 70s and language is different. That's not even the part I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, it would be so much easier if these kids didn't also need to have self-worth and love and
as if they're not just people.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Here's a quote about queer people.
Oh, great. I bet it'll be really nice.
The best prevention of gender confusion remains a strong home life. Homosexuality is much less likely to occur in the context of a loving home where parents are reasonably well-adjusted sexually themselves. If a parent provides a healthy, stable home life and does not interfere with the child's appropriate sexual development, homosexuality is less likely to occur. Here he's saying homosexuality is caused by inferiority.
Right.
And my parents, really good parents. Brad and Janet, you did a good job. I tell this to you pretty regularly.
I mean, it doesn't even make sense because if that were the logic and that were the truth, which it is not, but if it were, how would you explain, like, you and Kevin coming from the same home?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
My parents are very supportive of us,
right.
but also very traditional. They're very traditional gender roles. It just worked for them. They didn't impress that upon us, but they very much modeled it. And also, I am a very homosexual person, and
what?
I know. And Kevin is Kevin, and we love that for him. Here's a couple quotes about spanking.
Oh, good. We haven't had enough of that.
Quote, a child who defiantly challenges authority by disobeying instructions expects you to act. Don't disappoint him. Reserve a spanking for the moment of conflict when a child dares you to defend your right to lead. No other form of discipline is as effective as a spanking when willful defiance is involved. Nature has provided a wonderfully padded place for use in moments of haughty defiance, and I wish the disciplinary experts were less confused as to its proper purpose.
He thinks that's the proper purpose of butts?
Which I've written as the holy bonification of butts. Which was a phrase that I laughed for quite some time about. But
okay.
It's their sacred use. God designed them to be specifically hit, and if you aren't abusing your kids in this way, you are usurping God's divine plan for that.
And you're disappointing them.
He later says, I don't think I included this, they perceive it as disrespect if you don't take up their challenge. Butts are to be treasured. Hit them if you want, but only if you want. More quotes. By contrast, defiant behavior is very different from childish irresponsibility. It is headstrong and willful. It is premeditated and calculating. In short, it is intentional and deserves immediate disciplinary action. Based on nothing. But again, it's this negative view of people. They're inherently doing things that are bad to overcome this sense of inferiority, and your job as parents is to correct them up into and including child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's important. Dobson says, quote, "The same specialists also say that spanking teaches your kids to hit others, making him a more violent person. Nonsense. If your child has ever bumped his arm against a hot stove," and it's another quote, you know how that one goes. He uses it all the time.
Yeah.
"Here's some fucking studies for you, Dobby boy." In 2016, a meta-analysis, so a study of studies, looked at studies that represented 160,927 kids and found that all of these studies indicated a link between spanking and increased risk for detrimental child outcomes. Further, effect size did not substantially differ between spanking and physical abuse, or by study design. The effects felt by kids who were quote-unquote just spanked versus other forms of physical abuse did not statistically differ. Quote, "Among the outcomes in childhood, spanking was associated with more aggression, more antisocial behavior, more externalizing problems, more internalizing problems, more mental health problems, more negative relationships with parents. Spanking was also significantly associated with lower moral internalization, lower cognitive ability, and lower self-esteem."
Mm-hmm.
This whole book essentially is about building a child's confidence or self-esteem, and his main recommendation for discipline actively tears that down.
Have you ever met anyone so pro spanking? Why is he so into it?
I not to go all Freud, I do think there is some like psychosexual stuff mixed up in there.
I mean, I don't think people should spank their kids, but Dobby is like really like insistent upon it.
I know some parents who are pro spanking. I don't know anyone who's so pro spanking that they write multiple books over the course of 40 years about it. For the record, this study is called Spanking and Child Outcomes, Old Controversies and New Meta-Analyses by Gershoff and Grogan-Kaylor, published in the Journal of Family Psychology. I always put the studies we talk about in our notes, but I wanted to name this one specifically just because I am petty. Part 3, even the good advice is bad. So taken out of the context of this book, and generally who James Dobson is as a person, there are indeed some good bits of advice in this book. Quote, "It is high time that we declare all-out war on the destructive value systems I've been describing, the system that reserves self-worth and dignity for a select minority." Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I'm also against the white supremacist capitalistic patriarchy under which we all suffer. I don't quite think that's his point, but sure. He says to teach your child a no-knock policy, which is a terrible name. They're not allowed to talk shit about themselves. Don't knock yourself.
Oh.
That's positive.
Yeah.
I'm here for that. But even the good pieces of advice feel off to me. One of Dobson's main strategies of how to build confidence in your child is find out what they're good at and encourage them to do it more. And yeah,
Sure.
I'm glad my parents helped me learn to love playing piano, fostering some interest of mine and supporting me while I developed that skill. I'm also glad my parents didn't force me to play sports if I didn't want to, even as I'm also glad they were supportive of Kevin when he played sports in high school. Both of these things were useful in helping us build our respective senses of self-esteem. But Dobson doesn't say, help your kid find what they're good at. He says, help your child compensate. I agree with the general point here, but I hate the framing. It's not compensating to find your strengths. That framing implies in some ways that you are deficient. You are one down and need to compensate to get back up to neutral. Even while critiquing the general framing of our society, Dobson still accepts it. He's not really here to challenge these framings. It's a very hyper-individualistic sense. Yeah, the world's fucked and it's bad. You're not going to change it. But you can help your child compensate for the ways that they're fucked up. That is the majority of the arguments of this book. I have one other section just because I am a petty bitch that is multiple pages long. But Brooke, just from a professional perspective,
Yeah.
These conversations around inferiority and taking one model of psychology and applying it firmly.
Right.
How's all this sitting with you?
Terribly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
It as usual, there are landmines that you walk into, right? Where it's yeah, I agree. Oh, no, not like that though, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would even really use the word inferiority and superiority about the way that clients feel about themselves, right? I would sort of just explore all of it with them, right? And I don't know. It's still this. Yeah, it's this. His idea is you have low self-esteem, so you have to get good at something.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to learning to love and care about yourself.
I think that's a really important point too. one of the differences between just inferiority and conditions of worth is Dobson saying you need to do something to overcome that inferiority.
Right.
Whereas conditions of worth is you need to let go of those things and recognize that just by existing as a human being, you have worth. You deserve to be loved and cared for and respected.
Yeah. Unconditional positive regard.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to see the tapes of Dobson and Carl Rogers stuff.
Also, in my mind, whenever people talk about Carl Rogers, I do just think about Mr. Rogers.
They're basically the
They're
same.
basically the same
I
person.
think he did have a nice cardigan. Yeah.
I would absolutely believe that. Carl Rogers founded humanistic therapy.
Yeah. And if you ever want a really good time, or you're just a big therapy junkie, what are they called? The Dorothy tapes?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's like a woman who goes to Carl Rogers and then whoever the behavioral guy is, I always forget his name.
Mm.
Fritz Perls for Gestalt therapy, which is like in your face therapy, right?
Uh-huh.
Poor woman. I'm like,
I could talk endlessly about theories of therapy and the people who founded them. Family therapy is very fun. There's two people who did a very similar thing about experiences. One, his whole point was to be as much of an asshole as he could be to a family to get them to get the experience of coming together against him. Versus Virginia Satir, who was very much about like being a part of the family and having everyone feel love and connection.
Right. But the thing that I'm sitting with here, because this is, normally I have no idea what the hell we're talking about, but in this case I do, and so I'm getting riled up, and so now I don't really know how you do this all the time when you're doing this. But it's like, part of what I'm doing with my clients is sort of like walking them back to that space and having them take over. I always say, you are the adult in charge of you now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, whose voice is that when you're feeling inferior or when you're feeling whatever it is about yourself, low self-esteem, whatever you want to call it, it's like every once in a while it's like, is that you saying that? Probably not, because you don't say it to other people about them, right?
Yeah.
It's not your language or your voice, so it's probably not actually you. And so then we walk back into the past and say, like, what would you actually say to this kid in this moment? What would you do? Right? It's kind of reparenting. But no, that's not Dobson's way.
No. Part 4. James Dobson is lazy and sloppy.
That's the merch. That's our sequel podcast.
To be clear, I love a sloppy bottom, but come on.
Don't make me incessantly laugh at you. Don't bring out my incessant giggling. Oh, James Dobson is... What is it?
Sloppy bottom. Oh, I wrote James Dobson is lazy and sloppy for the title of this. This book is bad top to bottom, inside and out, right? It's bad in different ways. It's bad in interesting ways. But it's also just a half-assed piece of trash. I talked about this on TikTok. Follow us on TikTok at I Hate James Dobson. But I spent like 6 hours looking into one study he cites, although cites is even too strong of a word. This is the sentence. Stanley Coopersmith, Associate Professor of Psychology at the University of California, studied 1,738 normal, middle-class boys and their families. He found that the high self-esteem group's parents were significantly more strict in their approach to discipline. That's the sentence. A guy did it from California with 1,738 normal, middle-class boys and their families, and found that high self-esteem and parental strictness were correlated.
Yep.
I eventually did find this study, and I struggled to find it because Dobson was wrong about it in every which way till Sunday. For the record, the study is called The Antecedents of Self-Esteem by Stanley Coopersmith, published in 1967. You are welcome. First of all, the sample size isn't 1,738, it's 1,748. And it's not normal middle-class boys. They studied boys and girls in a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds. And as we know with Dobson, he takes discipline to mean child abuse, but that's not what the study advocates. Editing Jake here again. I don't think it did a great job describing how the study was done, so let me try it again here in post. The study had kids rate their self-esteem, and then they asked the moms a variety of questions. And then when they matched the kids' results in the moms' surveys, they found that kids who reported higher self-esteem had moms who generally agreed more with the statement, children are actually happier under strict training. Even so, when I'm saying more, for the group of kids with the highest reported self-esteem, their moms only agreed with that statement 38.7% of the time, not even the majority of the time. They just agreed with that statement more than kids who reported lower self-esteem. Dobson doesn't care that he's wrong about basically all the information here. He talks about it all of the time. Here's how he talks about the study in a newspaper column that he put out in a Q&A format, because he loves a fucking Q&A. I don't understand. Question. You told us what kinds of homes produce children with the greatest intellectual potential. Are there other studies that would tell us how to raise kids with the healthiest attitudes towards themselves and others? Answer. A study designed to answer that precise question was conducted some years ago by Dr. Stanley Coopersmith, Associate Professor of Psychology at the University of California, Davis. He evaluated 1,738 normal middle-class boys and their families, beginning in the pre-adolescent period and following them through young manhood. There's more to this quote. I don't care. This exact Q&A appears in guest columns from newspapers all over North America and throughout time. I found it in newspapers in the 90s, multiple times in the 2000s, and from the James Dobson Family Institute in 2014. Literally verbatim the same Q&A in every single one of those. He just copied and pasted. Same misinformation, same misinterpretation at all. And it's also included in his book, The Complete Marriage and Family Home Reference Guide. As a bitchy anecdote, he also usually attached another question to this column, which, again, he writes these. No one's writing in to say, like, whatever. This is the question he wrote for himself. You obviously have a great deal of empathy for kids who are in the junior high years.
Oh my God. That's like the questions that I get written into me sometimes. You are obviously a beacon of light and joy.
Brooke, as a person who is very hot, I just want to know, how do you handle such a burden?
It's very hard. It's very hard to be so symmetrical.
Signed, Brooke from Chicago. The structure of this book is bad and weird. Like I mentioned, there's very inconsistent Q&As. Some are at the end of chapters, other at the end of sections. All of it written in the tangential, like, shadowboxing strawman way we've come to know and loathe. Like, he will ask a question vaguely gesturing at some potentially real point, but he describes it so bad and then gives a rebuttal to that fake description of it. Here are his 10 strategies for building confidence in your child. You want to instill confidence in your child, you do this. Examine the values in your own home.
Yeah.
Sure. Reserve adolescence for the adolescents.
Don't be immature. Is that what it means?
Yeah. Don't play with Barbies.
Oh. Okay.
Teach your child a no-knock policy, as we talked about before. Mm-hmm. Sure. Help your child compensate. Help your child compete. Discipline without damaging self-worth. So spank your kid. Keep a close eye on the classroom about peer relationships.
Okay.
Avoid overprotection and dependency.
Yeah.
Teach children to be kind.
Sure.
And prepare for adolescence.
Well, yeah.
Okay, sure. I would do things like make sure you reassure your child that you love them frequently.
Right.
Or help them manage control of their emotions. Also, like, I laid them out in his order. There's 2 different types of adolescent talk, but they're not at all close to each other. Talking about, like, what you should teach your kids are in different places.
I would maybe teach my kids that all parts of them are them.
Yes.
And that it is okay to be grumpy and it is okay to be sweet. And, like, in terms of, like, it is human.
Yeah.
Right? And that I don't love them more or less for one.
These points are also unevenly spread out over 4 chapters that just don't... One is called Parent Positively, and that's mostly about child abuse. Just the organization of this book is a mess. I think that is my point. It feels like... I guess most of those points for building self-esteem in your child aren't bad, but...
They're also not compelling.
They're not compelling.
Like, be kind. Okay, did we need a book for that?
Yeah, and also, it's very funny that James Dobson is telling people to teach their kids to be kind. Sure.
Yeah, didn't he kick dogs?
Yes, he did. There's a anecdote in this book that I didn't include where he talks in graphic detail about how his dog, Sigmund Freud, murdered a hamster. I felt like that was a bit much for me.
Yeah.
He uses this book to rail against Barbies and queer people and school shootings and sex ed.
Oh, yeah, no one likes Barbies because she goes to work.
Yeah, she's too mature.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
she doesn't teach you how to be a mother.
No, she does not teach you how to be a mother. Mm-hmm. And also, she has boobs. I think that's part of his critique.
Yeah, although there were other dolls of the time that were mommies, right, that you could play with, and dollhouse dolls and all kinds of things. So Barbie specifically, because they had boobs too.
Sure, but hers are...
hers are bigger.
Non-reproductive breasts.
Yes, and Barbie goes to work.
Yeah. His citations are a mess. He only cites one academic paper in an academic journal. For reference, he cites himself and Focus on the Family 5 different times. And this isn't the only time he plagiarizes himself. This book is full of stories and ideas that he's talked about before. You might recognize some of these, a little bit of a greatest hits moment.
Yay.
The poor self-concept is extremely common among adults, and I think is particularly prevalent among the women in North America, the geographical area in which I am most familiar. To verify this observation of widespread personal dissatisfaction, I created a questionnaire some years ago entitled Sources of Depression Among Women. 10 items were listed. This is the list from...
What women wish they wanted from the Winter's Tale.
Yes, exactly.
Yay! Oh, this is like a fun quiz.
Mm-hmm. He just straight up takes verbatim by text 3 pages from Dare to Discipline.
You can't... Okay. You can't quote your own self as research.
He's at a concert where a teen choir is singing Battle Hymn of the Republic. Quote, one singer near the front row fainted and crumpled to the floor at a high point in the emotional presentation. The director went on with the performance, but now the suggestion of fainting had been planted in 52 impressionable heads. Boom! A second singer is down. Boom! 2 more hit the deck. The mania spread like wildfire. 5 more vocalists blanched, buckled, and dissipated from the back row. By the time the director reached the last glory, glory, hallelujah, 20 members of the choir were out cold on the floor. That is conformity at its best. He's told that story before.
Yeah, he has told that story before. Also...
It also didn't happen.
It didn't happen because who would continue the program with 20 fainted people?
I think I would stop with 1, but 20?
God, just like the woman that had to cut her meat for the husband, that story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, he makes these up.
This is a personal favorite of mine. Question and answer. Question, we live in the routine panic in our home as you described, being so busy. How can I slow down when it takes every minute of the day and night to care for my children? Answer. It is my conviction that a domestic help, a high schooler, for instance, the mother of small children should appear on the priority list. Without this, it goes on a list of things that moms are required to do. Doesn't it all, so the dad should help. How can a financially limited family afford house cleaning and babysitting services? Perhaps by using a competent high school student instead of older adults.
You love Rent-A-Teen so much.
I would suggest placing a call to the counseling office of the nearest senior high school. Tell the counselor you're looking for a mature student to do some cleaning. Do not reveal that you are looking for a regular employee. When the referred girl, I put girl in question mark, arrives, try her out for a day to see how she handles the responsibility. If she's very efficient, offer her a weekly job.
This is in the updated version?
Yes, this came out in 2015. He made sure to put Ted Bundy in this.
What if you called a high school
in 2015
and asked for a kid to do light chores around your house? You'd get arrested.
In 2015? What a psychopath.
Weird.
This book sucks. It is petty, it is small, it bleeds unchecked projection of his own insecurities and privileges. There are some pieces of good advice, I guess, but honestly, you'd be better off using this book as toilet paper.
This book is like a nothing burger.
Yeah.
Like, what is the information even? He repeats himself from his other books.
Mm-hmm.
He says, basically, try to be nice to your kids, but also hit them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing new or interesting.
No. Or
that anyone wouldn't already kind of know.
Yeah.
Like, what is the point of this even? I might be crappy.
I agree. I read this and I wanted to talk about the psychology part of it. I thought that was interesting, but I'm more like, what else are we going to talk about? I do want to give a few better recommendations for parenting books.
Yeah.
Because this ain't it, Chief. The one I recommend to many parents is called The Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel and Tina Bryson. Again, linked in the notes. It brings psychology and neuroscience into parenting in a way that I generally find to be approachable. I also recommend it to people doing like inner child work or just like learning how to talk to people generally. How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids by Jan C. Dunn, is more about managing the parental relationship with kids. But as a family therapist, let me tell you what, the parenting relationship plays a huge role in the development of your kids. I also recommend non-book media like the TV show Bluey or the ever-popular influencer Miss Rachel. Or Dr. Becky Kennedy. She's a psychologist, and I know that my mom has found a lot of value in her stuff. Yes, James Dobson is a terrible person. He advocates for child abuse, for gender-based violence, for white supremacy and patriarchy, and against queer people. He talks about disabled people in objectifying and eugenicist ways. He feigns humility enough to be seen as folksy despite having the biggest superiority complex I've seen other than Elon Musk and Donald Trump. But Brooke, he is our professional peer. And so professionally, I can say, fuck this guy. He sucks.
Fuck this guy.
I hate James Dobson.
Even though he's a sloppy bottom. I hate James Dobson. But guess who I love?
Dr. Becky Kennedy.
That's right.
Bluey is a good TV show.
I never saw it. I know basically what it is.
It's new. It's Australian.
Oh, wait. I was thinking of Blue's Clues. Yeah, the shows now are legit.
Some of them.
Those kids are learning.
Yeah. That is all that I have for this episode.
That was a good one. And also, that book sucked.
Yeah. I do feel like I have a better understanding of James Dobson as a person.
Yeah.
And that makes me a worse person.
Yeah. He really hates adolescents. Now, he has kids, right?
2 kids.
Boys.
A boy and a girl.
I think he had some smugness from that boy.
Mm-hmm.
Was he writing these books as he was parenting kids?
Some of them.
Are those kids my age?
Probably, yeah. About that.
Ew. I want to talk to them.
I know his son at least was involved with a lot of Focus on the Family stuff for a while. I think they both have written some books.
We should do a Dobson child book sometime. That'd be really interesting.
We should. I think I would hate that. And I think we should do it.
Ooh, I'll do it. I'll take one for the team.
Appreciate it. Readers, take care. See you.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were done.
Nope.
My bad. Cut all of that. I'm sorry.
We will see you in 2 weeks. Bye. I Hate James Dobson is a labor of love, written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Jake. I'm honored to be joined by my amazing co-host, Brooke. If you're enjoying the show, please consider rating and reviewing it, and if you want to connect with us more, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and Blue Sky at I Hate James Dobson, and, unfortunately still, on Twitter at I Hate JDobs. If you want to email us, you can do so at ihatejamesdobson@gmail.com. Special thanks, as always, to Drew, Lindsay, DJ, and Jack. Our theme music is by Mood Maze, and the song is called Trendsetter. Thank you for enjoying the show.